data to plug into the LASTE. On your climb out, you can write down the output. The A10A is being ready to embed in what would become Operation Direct Freedom. When in point mode, you should also see a box over the track in the TGP.
Aircraft type on first contact. Nellis AFC information pop-up, time 1455. Winds calm. Visibility greater than 10 miles. Broken 16,000 feet. Temperature 24. Dew point 08. Altimeter 30.09. Runways in U03 right, 21 left. Expect visual approach. Acknowledge receipt of information pop-up.
Tusk 2, check in.
Two's up.
Raj, let me know once you're ready to taxi.
Raj.
Nellis clearance, Tusk 2, clearance on request, ready to copy.
Tusk 2, clearance. Cleared to Dogbone via fighter departure as filed. Expect range entry through 6-3 Bravo. Climb and maintain Angels 12. Departure on 385.4, squawk 4017.
Tusk cleared to Dogbone via fighter departure. Range entry expected at 6-3 Bravo. Climb and maintain Angels 1-2. Departure on 385.4, squawk 4017. Thanks.
Two's got a good jet, and I'm ready to taxi.
Tusk 2, read back correct. Contact ground on 275.8. See ya.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.
And one's good and ready for taxi.
Alright, before we pull trucks and head north, let's recap the game plan.
Sounds good.
The plan is to head up to the Dogbone Lake area and do some work with the targeting pod. This will be the meat and potatoes portion of today's sortie. We'll be going over a lot of things, so just pay attention and keep up. We'll also talk about LASTE, which Biff should revisit on a later sortie. He also wanted me to do a quick recap on fencing in and out. We're going to dive into the pod pretty deep since it is a complex piece of the puzzle and you're new to it.
I'm excited to finally get into it.
The Lightning is a phenomenal addition to the A10's toolbox. It brings a ton of capability to the jet, which we'll get into. But for now, we need to take a look at the LASTE system, and more specifically, the wind edit function.
Let's do it.
The Low Altitude and Targeting Enhancement, or LASTE for short, was introduced in the A10A back in the 90s. Over the years, it has been updated and things added to it. Our autopilot, ground collision avoidance system, GPS, better targeting for our munitions, and so on and so forth.
Yep, a lot of that is carryover from the A10As that I flew.
Yeah, I think the Sweet 2 A10As had a lot of what you see in the Charlie, even the Iggy and the FC.
Sounds right.
So wind edit allows us to input atmospheric data like wind speed, wind direction, and outside air temperature at up to 7 different altitudes or layers.
Handy. So this is going to help dial in our accuracy, yeah?
Exactly. The FC will take the data we input into the wind edit page and adjust the pipper accordingly. You may not notice a huge difference when you're strafing, but you will see it when you're dropping CVU-97s from 10,000 feet. Regardless, it is always a good idea to input wind data so you have the most accurate firing solution possible.
Sold.
Go through the process together by plugging in current wind data for the local area, and we'll do that for 7 layers for today.
Cool. I'm ready when you are.
Bring up the CDU page on one of the MFCDs. Once you've done that, press function and then 1 on the UFC. This will take you to the system page. Let me know if you're still with me.
Okay, I'm in the system page.
You should see LASTE next to OSB7. Press OSB7 to enter the LASTE subpage. Once you've done that, you should see Wind at the bottom right. Press OSB10 to go into the Wind page branch.
Okay, it looks like I'm in the Wind page.
Near the top right corner, you should see 3 asterisk, / 3 more asterisk, and +24. That is the current wind speed from direction and speed, followed by the temperature and degrees Celsius. Since we are sitting on the ramp and not moving, we only have data for the temperature. No wind speed or direction is provided. When we get in the air, we'll get the wind data for the current altitude and position.
Roger.
This is a handy feature so that if need be, you can gather your own wind data to plug into the LASTE. On your climb out, you can write down the altitudes, wind speed, direction, and temperature, then plug all that information in to build an accurate wind profile for the jet to use.
This uses winds entered in MSL, correct? Not AGL?
Altitude MSL, yes, exactly.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure.
Nothing wrong with that. So here in Nellis, the local area is pretty high, so we'll start building our wind profile at 2,000 feet. We'll add in layers for 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, 10,000, 12,000, 17,000, and 25,000 feet for today. The winds are entered as thousands of feet using 2 digits. So 2,000 feet would be 02, and 15,000 feet will be 15. We're not going to be employing munitions today, so we can just input some generic data. Since we do have data for the 2000 block, let's use that. For the rest, reference your kneeboard and input that information into it. Got it?
So far.
Good. First, we have to put in all of our wind levels, then we have to go into the wind edit page and add in the wind data. Let's go ahead and input those altitudes. To do that, type 02 on the UFC, then hit OSB 18 to put 02 in the top entry. You should see that 02 fill in right under Alt. Yes?
Affirm.
Next, type in 04 and press OSB 17, then 06 and OSB 16, which should fill up all of our spots for entry, yeah?
Yeah, looks that way.
No problem. Press function and the data rocker up on the UFC to go to page 2 of the wind page branch.
There we go.
Go ahead and type in the other 4 altitudes, the same as you did for the others, and let me know when you're done.
Raj, stand by. Alright, I've got layers for 10, 12, 17, and 25,000 feet.
Good. The next thing we're going to do is add in the wind speed and direction.
Sounds good.
The first thing we're going to do is go from the wind page into the wind edit page. So next to OSB 8, it says wind edit. Press that OSB to enter the page.
Okay, it now says wind edit at the top of the page.
That is what we're wanting to see. So now let's plug in those wind directions, wind speeds, and temps. First up is our 2,000 feet layer. It is 350 for 07. Without any spaces, type in 35007 on the UFC and press OSB 18 to input that data for the layer.
Done. 350/07.
Next will be the temperature, and it is 24 degrees at 2,000 feet. To input that, type in 24 into the USC and press OSB 8 to put it into that field.
I have plus 24 on the right now.
As I'm sure you can guess, that is indicating a positive 24 degrees Celsius. If we need to input a negative temperature, simply press the applicable OSB again, and you'll see the plus sign change into a minus sign. Press OSB 8 again to watch that happen, and when you've done that, finish inputting the rest of the supplied wind data, and let me know when you're ready to move on.
Raj, stand by.
Talking about all this made me think to add, if you ever need to check the magnetic deviation, it's really easy. On the USC, just press function, then hat. That'll take you to the position info page. On it, you'll see right under your airspeed and Mach MV, followed by either E for east deviation or W for west, and the deviation in degrees. Sorry, keep punching in the winds and I'll leave you alone.
You're fine, you're fine. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Alright, fill in winds data for all 7 layers.
Nice. I guess we're ready to taxi then. Call ground and I'll follow you out. Wait, did you hit up clearance delivery already?
Affirm.
Okay, just making sure.
Nellis ground, Tusk 2 is 2 A10s at Thunder with Papa and ready for taxi to 03 right.
Tusk 2, Nellis ground, taxi Golf to Alpha, hold short 03 right. Papa is current.
Taxi Golf Alpha, hold short 03 right for Tusk 2. Alright, let's roll.
2. I miss the Viper sometimes.
You used to fly them?
Yep. Back when I was active duty.
Roger.
As a matter of fact, Biff and I were at Mount Hope together for a period of time. I was in the 389th flying Block 52s, and Biff was in the 391st flying the F-15 Echo.
Nice. Did you guys know each other very well?
Not particularly well.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
Tusk 2, switch tower, 327.7.
Tusk 2, switching to tower.
2 switched.
Coming up to the hold line.
2.
Nellis Tower, Tusk 2, holding 03 right at Alpha.
Tusk 2, winds are calm. Clear for takeoff 03 right.
Tusk 2, clear for takeoff 03 right.
Two is rolling. Two is wheels up.
2, contact departure 385.4. So long.
Tusk 2, switching to departure. See ya. Nellis departure, Tusk 2.
Tusk 2, over departure.
Tusk 2 is just out of Nellis and to the northwest.
Tusk 2, radar contact. Continue direct for Fighter 4, maintain Angels 14.
Direct for fighter, climb and maintain Angels 1-4, Tusk 2.
Since we probably have got a few minutes, let's talk about the AN/AAQ28 Lightning AT Targeting Pod.
Sounds good.
The Lightning Pod is a widely used advanced targeting pod built by Northrop Grumman and Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems. It is a little over 7 feet long and weighs 455 pounds. It was used on the A10A late in its life, but in a peculiar manner.
What do you mean by that?
This was all before my time, but as I understand it, back in 2002, the A10A was being readied for its involvement in what would become Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Alpha was never really wired for a TGP, but the A10A weapons officers knew it needed a targeting pod, so they had to do some clever shit to get it to work. They made the jet think that it was talking to a Maverick, and they made the pod think that it was talking to a Block 30 F-16. As somebody said, it was a technology demonstrator that wound up going to war.
That's hilarious. Fucking get it done, I guess.
You're damn right. Back on track now. Having the TGP has become a huge asset to the hard community for so many reasons. It allows us to self-designate our own laser-guided bombs or others, generate targeting data for JDAMs, get in a close-in, higher resolution look at our potential target, generate a SPI, shoot an IR beam, and so many other things. It is one of the biggest tools in our box.
I'm sure of that.
The pod aids us in positive target identification, surveillance. It helps to keep us out of AAWES while watching or searching for something. And coupled with the data link, it can help us ID friendly positions and so much more. Just like anything else though, it does have its disadvantages. First and foremost, the narrow field of view. It is easy to take what you're seeing in the pod and not get the full picture of the situation. The narrow FOV also makes finding things tough sometimes, especially when you're close to where you're looking. Also, it is easy to get sucked into the pod and lose SA. It's important to keep one eye on the pod and another eye on what's going outside the jet, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
How about we go ahead and turn the pod on, so that when we get to the range, it's already on and ready to go.
Sounds good.
On the AHCP, I'll find the TGP switch. Go ahead and put it into the on position. This will power up the pod and start cooling off the flare. This process takes about a minute before the pod is fully up and ready to use. As a matter of fact, go ahead and put the TGP page up on one of the MFCDs.
Okay, TGP page is up and the TGP switch is in the on position.
Good. So right now you should see not timed out being displayed over a black background. As it comes online, that background will change to gray. When that happens, you'll see some OSB options appear, and then some text telling you about version numbers and stuff will also appear. After that, the stuff in the center of the screen will disappear, and it will go back to a black background, and a green box around standby will appear near OSB 3. This indicates that the pod is on and ready to be used, but in standby mode.
Copy all.
We'll pause the lesson now and pick it back up once we get to dog bone.
Roger.
Trust 2, contact Blackjack at 377.8.
Blackjack at 377.8, Tusk 2.
And 2's there.
Blackjack, Tusk 2.
Tusk, go for Blackjack.
Blackjack, Tusk 2 is approaching fighter at Angels 1-4, looking for entry for dog bone.
Tusk 2, Blackjack. Entry approved via 63 Bravo, then direct for Dogbone. The range is yours from now until 10:30 local.
Tusk 2 is cleared entry at 63 Bravo, then direct to dog bone until 10:30 local.
Good. Let's fence in.
Roger, lead is fenced in.
Warning, autopilot.
Okay, picking the lesson back up. The first thing about using the pod is that in order to use it effectively, we need to do what we can so that it doesn't get masked by the jet. Probably the most obvious way to do this is by keeping the area we're looking at in front of us or off to the side that the pod is on. We usually fly it on station 10 over the right wing, so we'll do clockwise or right-hand orbits today.
Raj.
With that in mind, go ahead. Bring steer 3 down the right side and set up a nice wide right-hand orbit around Dogbone. Just make sure we don't wander into the container up there to our northwest. Give me a heads up when you're ready.
Alright, I'm in a right-hand orbit around the lake bed.
Bring up the TGP page on one of the MSCDs. The pod should be well and truly ready by this point, so when you bring it up, you should see that the top STBY or standby option is highlighted.
Yep, that's what I'm seeing.
So that indicates that the pod is in standby mode. We can activate the pod by pressing either the air-to-air or air-to-ground options. Doing so will unstow the sensor and bore sight the pod. Keeping it in standby mode rolls the ball back into the stowed position and protects the lenses from bugs, birds, and being sandblasted. Press OSB 2, A to G to put the pod into the air-to-ground mode.
Alright, the pod is now in air-to-ground mode, and I've got video.
We're going to spend quite a lot of time today on the pod, so we're not going to cover its air-to-air application. This will have to pick that up on a later sortie. For today, just know that the air-to-air mode exists.
Roger.
Looking at the air-to-ground page, you can see that we've got a lot going on here. Let's have a look at all of that information in more detail.
Let's.
Across the top OSBs, not much has changed from the default standby page. The only difference here is that the A to G option is now highlighted, indicating that we're now in air-to-ground mode.
What about where it says wide on the left?
We're not quite there yet, but don't worry, we'll get there.
Sorry.
No problem. On the right, you see a new option for LSS next to OSB 6. On the AHCP, flip the laser arm switch into the armed position, and you'll see LSR pop up to OSB 7. Give me a heads up when you've done that.
Laser is armed, and I see LSR next to OSB 7.
LSR indicated that when the nose wheel steering button on the stick is depressed or the auto fire function reaches its set time to impact, only the laser will fire. Pressing OSB 7 again will set it to IR, which will only fire the IR pointer. Pressing it one more time will fire both the laser and the IR pointer. This mode is indicated by this or both being displayed next to OSB 7.
Copy all.
Down at OSB 11, we have DCLT or declutter. Pressing it will remove the OSB labels at the top and along both the left and right hand sides. Right now I don't have anything on the left since I'm in CCD mode in the pod. Slide the TGP page for me by pressing either the QWERTY hat towards the MFCD page with the pod on it, or simply by pressing the OSB where it says TGP. If you've done it correctly, you'll see TGP highlighted green and the green box outlining the TGP page. Also, make sure your boat switch is in the center so that when you soy the pod, you don't go into an IR mode yet.
TGP is set as soy.
I'd like for you to slave your TGP to steer 4. This way we can both be looking at the same thing and ensure the pod is looking at something and not just foresighted ahead of us. To do this, make sure you have steer 4 selected and then simply hold China hat F long and it should drive the sensor to it. Give me a heads up once you're good.
And visual on the airfield on the lake bed.
Good. Slew the pod and have a look around the field. As you do this, have a glance over at the TAD. There you'll see a green diamond. The diamond indicates where the pod is looking. Once you're ready to move on, hold the China hat F long to drive the pod back onto steer 4 and let me know.
Okay, I'm back to looking at steer 4 and ready to press.
There will be times when we need to foresight the pod. In the older suites of the A10C, China hat F short would unwind and foresight the pod. I tell you this because there are still some of the older jets out on the line that have not yet been upgraded. In the newer suites, we foresight the pod through the TGP page on the MFCD. In these newer jets, OSB 5 will be labeled B-S with a number below it. That number is the mils below the zero sightline of the jet. The default is minus 150. You can adjust this value by typing in the desired depression into the UFC and then hitting OSB 5 to input that number. Go ahead and foresight the pod for me. After you've done so, you'll need to slave the TGP back to the mark point or the steer point. Re-foresight the pod, then slave it back to the steer point for me, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
I foresighted the pod and now I'm looking back at the sphere.
Nice. Next, let's mess around with the China hat forward. Pressing forward short will cycle between wide and narrow field of view. And since we're playing with the zoom levels, pressing DMS up and down on the stick will zoom in and out of both field of view modes. Pressing China hat forward long will slave all sensors, including your targeting pod, to your SPI. Have a go with switching between the field of view and zooming in and out. When you're happy, we'll press on to the next item.
And I'm ready for the next thing.
Sweet. Pressing both switch forward on the throttle will put us into black hot mode. Go ahead and do this for me. When you've done it correctly, you'll see B hot at the top right of the TGP page.
Alright, I'm in black hot.
Alright, as you can see, we now have some more shit on the left-hand side of the page. We have gain at OSB 18 and 2 arrows and 4G in the middle of them. The arrows are the gain and level schedule controls. They are used to adjust the gain and level up and down. The adjustment range is between 1 and 8. 4G indicates we're at 4 of 8 on the adjustment for the gain. Press OSB 18 to switch to the level control.
Okay, I see LVL next to OSB 18 now.
Perfect. This indicates you can now adjust your level. Adjusting both the gain and level will help you fine-tune the picture. It's kind of like adjusting the brightness, sharpness, contrast, and all of that on your TV. Adjusting these values will help you distinguish between objects, making things stand out more, and even help your pod in tracking a moving target. Don't be afraid to get in there and mess with these to make your job easier. As a matter of fact, go ahead and take a minute or two and we'll have a go playing with them. See how they both change the quality of the picture. When you're ready, let me know and we'll move on.
Roger. Okay, I've had enough fun. Let's move on to the next thing.
Actually, backing up a bit, we have our two IR modes, black hot and white hot. When in black hot, anything that is warm will show up darker than cooler things, and the opposite is true for white hot, which I'm sure you could guess. CCD, or the Charged Coupled Device, is your daytime electrical optical sensor. You may hear people refer to it along with the non-IR Maverick missiles as TEV, but CCD is what it actually is.
Roger.
So with either IR or CCD mode, in narrow or wide field of view, you're always going to struggle with looking at that proverbial soda straw. Both CCD and IR see in a 1 degree by 1 degree area when in narrow field of view. However, when in wide field of view, IR actually has a slightly better viewing area at 4 degree by 4 degree versus the CCD viewing area of 3.5 degree by 3.5 degrees.
That's interesting.
Let's dive into the options we have to adjust the functionality of the pod and the information that's displayed.
Bitter batter, let's get at her.
Okay. We'll first look at the air-to-ground control page. Press OSB1 to enter this page. Let me know when you're looking at it.
Alright, I'm in the targeting pod's AG control page.
Starting with OSB6, we've got our focus reset. This will automatically adjust the focal length on the CCD sensor. Next we have the coordinate display section. We can choose whether the pod gives us coordinates in lat long, MGRS, or we can even turn it off. Under that, we have latch on or off function. Latch off will only fire the laser, IR pointer, or both. Only as long as we have the nose wheel steering button held down. Latch on fires it till it's shut off. So with latch on, we press and release nose wheel steering. This will fire the laser. The pod will continuously fire until we press nose wheel steering again to shut it back off. With me so far?
Yes, ma'am.
OSB 9 is where we'll find our yardstick option. It can either be set to metric, which displays meters, or we switch it over to the imperial system, labeled as US, which will display in feet. OSB 10 is for the gain control, which we're not going to mess with, and we're not messing with clear interrogation on OSB 16 if you're in CCD mode.
Roger.
Hang with me, we'll get you playing with the pod in a little bit.
It's fine. I know we need to cover all of this and that, and it is all important.
It is. Okay, OBS or OSB 17 has our laser spot search code. The value that we put in here will be the pulse repetition frequency that the lightning pod will look for when we activate the LSS function. It will be important to input the correct code, otherwise if you've got the default code of 1688 in there, but the laser source you're looking for is shooting for a PRF of 1121, your pod will never find it. Right up above it we've got L at OSB 18. This is the PRF that our pod will shoot. Here it will be important to make sure the PRF your pod is shooting matches what the MAU 169s on the front of your G12s are looking for, or your wingman's bombs if you're buddy lazy. We adjust both through the UFC, and we'll do that here in a few minutes.
Raj.
The last thing we'll see here in the control page is the TGP Attitude Advisory function at OSB 20. This function allows us to input an altitude in feet from 0 feet all the way up to 65,000 feet, which may be a little optimistic for the hawk community since we still haven't gotten the funding for our pressure suit.
Can you imagine stepping to the jet with red bands with the lazy boy recliners in the back, in a full astronaut suit like the U-2 and SR-71 pilot?
That'd be awesome. Anyway, back to the TAF function. Put in an altitude we don't want to go below, let's say 18,500 feet. If we did down to 18,500 feet and throw in more than 75 degrees of bank with a pitch of less than 0 degrees, we'll get a big red box across both of our MSCDs that says check attitude. We'll also get the same thing if we exceed minus 20 degrees of pitch angle below that altitude, regardless of our bank angle.
Okay, how do we do that?
Type in 18500 on the UFC and then press OSB 20 to input that. You should see 18500 on the TAF if you did it correctly.
Good to go?
Wonderful. Actually, let's go ahead and get the pod configured for what we're going to be doing today. We've got the attitude advisory set up. Let's set up the PRS. I'm going to have you go with 1222 and I'll go with 1221. On the UFC, type in 1222 and then press OSB 18 to input that for L.
1222 set.
Now input my PRS of 1221 for the spot search.
Done.
Continuing our way around the control page, switch out units to USA, latch to on, and set chords to MGRS on OSBs 9, 8, and 7 respectively.
Got it.
Press OSB 1 to return to the air to ground page.
Done.
Alright, let's go over some of the symbology we see displayed on the targeting pod page. Starting from the top left, we have our field of view indication, which will say either wide or narrow, depending on what you're in, and just above that we have OZ. This is our zoom factor. 0 is zoomed all the way out, while a factor of 9 is zoomed all the way in.
Got it.
Back on the top right, again we have our sensor type, and below that should show a 0. That is our radar altitude. Down at the bottom center is the coordinates where the pod is looking. Just to be sure we're looking at the same stuff and you did not accidentally slew the pod or set a different speed, ensure you've got steer 4 airfield selected. Pressing TMS down long to set steer 4 as speed, and then China hat aft long to slave the TGP to the steer point.
Alright, looking at steer 4.
Good. We should now see our MGRS coords, 11 Sierra Papa Alpha 381711. Between the chords and the bottom OSB labels, you should see the elevation of where the pod is looking. If you slew the pod to a steer point, it will display the steer point's altitude. If you exclude the pod anywhere else, you'll see the surface elevation of whatever is in the center of the crosshair.
Roger that.
The source for the elevation that is shown is the DTSAS. The DTSAS is phenomenal, but not always 100%. And if you ever need to double check the accuracy of the DTSAS elevation, screw the pod to where it is you need to check and laser it real quick. The laser will update you with the no shit elevation for that point.
Noted.
I'll leave it to Biff to dive into that more when the time comes. In the bottom left hand corner we have a very basic altitude indicator and an altimeter with the bigger numbers of thousands of feet and the smaller one as hundreds. So in that display a big 18 and a small 3 would be 18,300 feet ASL. These are just to help aid your SA when your head's down.
Word.
Above the attitude indicator, we have a digital clock that displays the current Zulu time. That should be the last bit of symbology along the perimeter of the targeting pod page. Next, we'll look at all the things that are inside that perimeter.
Right on.
Starting in the top right corner, find the north arrow. The line with an arrow at the end of it is the north pointer. There are lines extending east, south, and west also. The north arrow will always point northward. Note that it is normalized to the ground, so when whatever we're looking at in the pod is at a shallow angle, the pointer will appear flatter, and maybe a little hard to read and discern direction. The north arrow really helps when we're doing talk-on through the pod when it is used correctly.
Roger.
Hit China hat forward long for me to center back up onto steer 4, then using the north arrow in the pod is the F86 east or west from the hangar.
The airplane is to the east of the hangar.
Actually, the F86 is parked on the west side of the hangar. This is what I was talking about when I said that the north arrow can be really hard to read sometimes. Make sure you get a handle on it in the future.
Raj, I'll work on it.
In the middle of the right-hand side, we have the yardstick numeric. This value is either in feet or meters, depending on what you have it set to in the options. The yardstick itself is the ground distance covered by one of the right horizontal lines in the crosshair.
Understood.
Let's try a little exercise with the yardstick real quick. At CR4, there are a handful of airplanes on the route. Tell me the distance between the southernmost plane and F86 and the northernmost plane, which is in S3. Would that distance be closest to 1 mile, a quarter mile, 1 click, or 100 meters?
That's looking about a quarter mile.
I agree. It is damn close to a quarter mile or 400 meters. Alright, back at it. Moving to the bottom right towards the center, we have the range and source information. The range is the slant range to the target in nautical miles, and the letter to the left is one of the three letters used to identify the source for that range. E means that the pod is not tracking a target, and no laser ranging is available. T indicates that a target is being tracked, we still have no laser ranging. And finally, L indicates that we have laser ranging available to us. Moving on, let's talk about our laser status.
Yes, let's.
To the left of the range and source info, we'll find the laser status. This can be a combination of the following letters: L for laser, P for pointer only, B for both laser and pointer, and T for training. I forgot to mention it, but there will be an M between your range and your source when the targeting pod is masked by the airframe or stores.
Mike for mask. Got it.
Kind of in the bottom middle of the page, you can see the track mode. Basically, we have an area and point modes. Area is stabilized over an area, but not over a specific object. If we're looking through the pod in area mode and we mask the pod, it will default into INR-A, or inertial area mode. This will keep on the spot that you were last looking at until the pod becomes unmasked, at which time it will revert back into the area mode, and you should still be looking at the same thing, providing that it hasn't moved.
Very cool.
Point mode will stabilize on and track a specific target, even if it's moving or stops moving. When in point mode, you should also see a box over the track in the TGP. If the pod goes masked while you're looking at a target in point mode, it will go into the INR-P mode. This is the inertial point mode. If the target is moving when the pod goes masked, the pod will continue to follow the last seen direction and speed. If the target continues in the same direction and speed, when you come unmasked it should be right there. However, if it stops, turns, or stops moving in another direction, you may have to search around to find it.
Roger.
In the bottom left, we've got a 1, which indicates our INS performance rating. In the top left, we see M1. This is the select mask shape for the A10C. So long as you're flying the Hog, you should always see M1.
M1 always for the A10. Got it.
In the center of the TTP air-to-ground page is the crosshair. There are a few variations of the crosshair. If you're ready, we can have a look at those.
Always. Let's do it.
At its simplest form, we have the straight-lined crosshair with an opening in the center. This represents an area tracked vertical. If we put the pod into point track and pick up a track, that opening at the center will become boxed. If you're in a wide field of view, you'll see the indicators out towards the corners of the crosshairs. If you have the IP pointer set to be fired by itself or with the laser, you'll see small perpendicular lines at the outer edges of the crosshairs. The last bit of TGP page symbology we're going to talk about is the situational awareness cue. The SAQ is a small white box that you see floating around in the TGP display. The SAQ shows you your TGP's line of sight, or where it is looking in azimuth and elevation. So if the dot was in the center of your display, your TGP would be looking directly underneath your aircraft. If the dot was halfway between the center and the edge of the display at the 3 o'clock position, the pod would be looking at a 45-degree downward angle off your right wing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I've got it.
Cool. I will say this as a final parting shot on the SAQ. Pay attention to it. As implied by its name, it helps build your SA. It can be a good tool to help you visually find something out of the canopy and so much more. Just don't forget that it is there, more than.
Sounds good.
Use the pod to look about a mile to the southeast of the airfield, and you should see a large facility with 4 smokestacks. Papa Alpha 394706. Let me know when you see them building in the pod.
Contact.
Roger. With the pod centered on the building with the smokestacks, and with TGP soy, make TGP generate the speed by pressing TMS forward long. As you do this, you should see a white 3-tiered wedding cake appear over the top of the green diamond in the TAD. Also, in the lower left of the HUD, you'll see the speed generator indication switch from STPD to TGP. Wherever your TGP looks now, that's going to be your speed.
It looks like I did it right. I see the 3-tiered cake and the indicator in the HUD.
Great. Get in the habit of creating mark points when you've got something of interest in the pod. Inevitably, the pod will get dragged off while you're looking at accidentally, or you'll scan a quarter mile down the road in the wrong direction, and you'll need to get back to that point of reference quickly. Having a mark point on it will allow you to drive the pod right back to that spot. With that in mind, boresight the pod. As this happens, you should see the pod snap to its boresight looking straight ahead, or more correctly, 150 mils below the zero sight line directly ahead of the aircraft. In the TGP page, you'll see the SAQ at the 12 o'clock position and slightly depressed. In the HUD, the TGP diamond will appear in the middle. Give me a heads up when you're boresighted.
Alright, I'm boresighted.
Pretty easy, right? So through the saddle, you can broadcast our speed just like what you learned when you talked about the TAD. Just make sure you've got the correct speed generator set. You don't want to broadcast your steer points instead of what you're tracking in the TGP, right? Since you've already covered it, we're not going to dive into it more than that.
Roger.
Before we move on, reset the speed to the steer point for me is TMS aft long. You should see STPT reappear back in the HUD. Let me know once you've cleared the speed, and we'll move on to mark points.
SPI is cleared off.
Sweet. Generating a mark point in the pod is remarkably easy. Again, I highly recommend dropping mark points like breadcrumbs. Should you become lost in your search through the pod, it can help you find your way back. In order to drop a mark point on whatever the crosshairs are pointing at, all we need to do are 2 simple steps. First, make sure the TGP is soy and looking where you want the mark point. Next, hit TMS right short, and that is it. The mark point will be placed right in the middle of the crosshairs. Mark points are generated sequentially, so if the last one you used was golf, for instance, the one you just generated will be hotel. The way I ensure that I've successfully generated a mark point is that I look on the tab real quick. I should see a green box with the corresponding mark point letter with it over the TGP diamond. Let me know when you've created a fresh mark point. Slew the pod anywhere you please and generate a mark point as we just discussed.
Mark point set.
Place the steer point dial into the mark point position. Select the mark point you just generated, then hit China hat half long to slave in the pod to that steer. Have a go at practicing this by bore sliding the pod, then slaving it to the mark point using the method I just outlined. Let me know when you're ready to move on and we will.
That worked like a charm.
Great. Place the steer point dial back into the flight plan for me.
Done.
You'll learn about it later on in the syllabus, but you can do some really neat shit with the clever use of mark points. Like dropping a stick of 4 JDAMs or WCMDs in one pass onto different targets.
Hot damn. That sounds pretty epic.
It is, especially when it's in combat. We're going to look at generating a speed off the HUD and driving the TGP bit next.
Raj, what about using the helmet?
I think Biff is going to go all over the helmet stuff on one sortie later down the road, so we're not going to mess with it today. Anyways, I've got a story about setting a speed off the TDC in the HUD.
Let's hear it.
The caveat is this is during an air warrior exercise and not combat. Anyhow, we are up station and we're looking for some asshole HVT in a white Toyota Hilux pickup truck with some Dale Earnhardt number 3s on the door some goon put out there for PID. Well, we're up there looking in this wide valley for this dude. We can't find him. Then, all of a sudden, I catch this faint glint way the hell out there miles away. I padlock it. As I roll in to put the nose on it and bring the spot I'm looking at into the HUD's FOV, drive the TDC over the area, set a speed, slave the pod to it, and start looking for something shiny in the TVP page.
Please tell me you saw the Intimidator's number on the door.
You know it. They had it configured as one of those remote-controlled targets. I closed in and obliterated it with a 2-second burst. We must have looked for that truck for like an hour. That 2-second burst made it worth it though.
Haha, that is awesome. Praise hell, praise Dale.
I guess. Well, I'll teach you to do it, should you ever have to go find the number 3 or any other race trucks.
Sounds good.
We'll go through the process, then I'll have you execute it afterwards. Does that work?
Sounds good. Let's do it. So to speak.
To state the obvious, what we're wanting to look at needs to be within the HUD's field of view. Next, make sure the HUD is our soy by pressing Coolie Hat up, verifying that by the asterisk in the lower left. You're going to want to see the target designator Q box inside of the total velocity vector. If you don't see that TDC box inside of the TVV, China hat after short will re-gauge the TDC to the TVV. Next, using the slew control, move the TDC to where you want it. After you slew it out to a spot on the ground, it should be ground stabilized. Providing all that has worked, Make your TDC generate the speed by TMS forward long, then a little China hat forward long action to get all your things looking at the speed.
Okay, so to recap, soy the HUD, make sure the TDC is inside of the TPV, put the point of interest inside of the HUD's field of view. Next, slew the TDC over the spot, DMS up short if needed, and if it automatically ground stabilizes, DMS forward long, then China hat forward long. That sound about right?
That sounds correct. Go ahead and find something with your eyes. Point the jet at it and do the rest of the process like we talked about. Practice it a few times if you like. When you've had your fun, we'll move on.
Sounds good. I'll let you know when I'm done. Alright, I think I get the idea. What's next?
Tracking moving targets in the TGP is what's up next. Fleet the pod to Tier 5 for me. Somewhere in that area we should have an APC driving around in circles for us.
I've got Steer 5 in the pod. Looks like a shipping container is there or something.
Yep, that's what we want to see. You may have to go into a wide field of view and zoom out, then look around to find the truck when we're ready for that. For now, let's have a word about moving targets in the targeting pod.
Sounds good.
A few things about getting and maintaining a point track on a moving target. Firstly, your TGP may not get a solid track on your first attempt. You may have to adjust your zoom level on the video in the TGP page. It's going to be easier for the pod to track something that contrasts well with the surrounding environment. It will usually be easier to drag the crosshairs out in front of the fixed path and let it drive into them, versus letting the pod try and pick it up with them right on top of it.
Why is that?
It seems to pick up the track a little more efficiently. At least it does for me.
Roger.
Have a look in the area around Steer 5 and locate that APC.
Do you want me to reposition and set up an orbit over Steer 5?
Negative. I actually want you to go masked at some point so I can show you something. If Steer 5 is currently masked for you, that's fine. Just continue to spin until you go unmasked. Let me know when you're visual on the moving APC.
Tally APC.
Pressing TMS forward short will cycle you between area and point track modes. Please ensure that you're in point track. Point track mode set. Now I want you to achieve a stable point track on that APC. Your indicators for this will be a so-called point track box appeared centered over the object being tracked, and the pod will move with the track, keeping it all centered in the display.
Roger. Stand by 1. Looks like I've got a good track here.
Good job. Even with the pod tracking a target, we can adjust our field of view and zoom levels, switch between IR and EO, and set a speed on that track as we would a static target.
Nice.
The next thing we're going to look at is actually using the laser and IR pointer. Obviously, the targeting pod has a laser in it for targeting. It also has an IR pointer. Unfortunately, we can't do much with the pointer right now since it's daytime.
That's unfortunate.
You will get to play with it when you do your night sortie. Anyways, the pod will emit a beam of IR light that anyone wearing night vision will be able to see, but anyone not wearing night vision will never see it.
That's pretty rad.
It is neat the first time you see it. It literally looks like a laser beam straight from the jet down to the road where the pod is looking.
Sweet.
The laser emits light in a spectrum that cannot be seen by either NODs or the naked eye. We can adjust its pulse repetition frequency, PRF, or as some folks calls it, the laser code. The pod will always default to 1688 on power up, but through the menu we can change that PRF to match our laser guided weapons or another attacker's weapons.
Yeah, I think you've already talked on some of that.
Shit, that is right. We already got our PRF set up, right?
Yep, I'm shooting a 1222.
Okay, cool. Moving on then. The pod will emit in 3 different ways. We can only shoot the laser, only the IR pointer, or both of them at the same time. Press OSB 7 for me and cycle through the different options. As you do this, you'll see the indications for the laser status change in the TGP page and in the HUD. Return to laser only mode and let me know when you are ready to press on.
Ready to move on.
Some of the ways we can get into trouble with the pod are having the wrong PRF set and shooting the pointer only. Having a PRF that differs from the one set on the weapon used will obviously cause an issue. If we have a problem with different codes between the pod and the weapon, or we're in IR pointer mode, we may get a TGP auto-laze fail or laser code mismatch message. You should always do a solid cross-check between the weapon's profile and TGP settings, or between yourself and whomever you're working with, if you're buddy lazing or being buddy lazed, before you pickle.
Roger that.
As gangsta as the pod is, it does have its limitations. Smoke, clouds, dust, and sand will all affect the pod. Even on a clear day, the pod's laser has a maximum useful range of somewhere around 8 miles. Despite having a limited range, the laser is damn powerful. Make sure you're not shooting it at other airplanes, grunts, or anything else you don't want to risk permanent eye damage to. One more consideration. We are not the only ones with night vision. If you're out there blasting the IR pointer, just remember, it also draws a line straight back to your aircraft that anyone else with NODs can see.
That's worth remembering.
We're now going to learn the laser spot search process.
Sounds good. Let's get after it.
With LSS, we're going to use the pod to search for a laser spot in the designated PRF. The pod will automatically begin a search path looking for that laser energy. Once it detects it, the pod will go in attack mode and slew itself to the laser spot and hold there until we exit the LSS mode. We'll use LSS to get the pod onto a target or an area when we're working with JTACs or other airborne assets like F-15 Echoes or MQ-1 Preds or whatever.
Ah, this must be why we've got some boots out here with us today.
There's no fooling you. Yeah, Vandal is out here with a PEC-1 just so you can work on LSS. So make sure you're paying attention so as to not waste our time.
Will do.
The first thing you need to know about the laser spot search is that the pod is looking for that laser energy in an area out in front of the jet. It is not looking all over the place for the spot, so you need to have a basic idea where the laser is so you can get the jet and thus the pod pointed in that general direction. Zooming out and putting the pod into wide field of view will also help.
Copy.
Additionally, your pod will need to be looking for the same PRF as the one that Vandal is shooting. I believe he is going to be shooting 1688, so go back into your TGP's control page and make sure you see 1688 set for the LSS, please. If it is not, type it into the UFC and pop it into that field.
Laser spot search set for 1688.
I'll make sure Vandal is using that PRF when we check in with him. But 1688 should be good to go. Moving on, providing we're in a good spot to see the spot downrange, and we're looking for the correct PRF, it is a damn simple process, from our side at least. We'll make the call saying we're ready for the laze, and Vandal will call he is lasing, and we press one button, and the pod does the rest. Nice and easy.
Just like I like 'em.
Anyways, let's slide over to Steer 6 and we'll see if we can't get a hold of the JDAC to get this party started.
Roger, pushing to Steer 6.
Set up in a wheel here and I'll give Vandal a call. Come up 145.250. Copy.
Tusk 2-2, Vandal has you Lima Charlie. How may?
I have you same. We are en route to IP forward at this time. Give us 5 mics and we should be ready if you guys are all set up.
We're all set up down here when ready.
Tusk 2-2 copies. Thanks, guys.
Vandal, Tusk 2-1 is established at IP forward, standing by spot.
Copy Tusk, laser target line is 360. Run-in heading 320 to 040. Stare TRP 1.
Warning, autopilot.
Tusk 2-1 is IP inbound, 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Laser on.
Vandal, lasing, 1688.
Tusk 2-1, spot, cease laser.
Tusk 2-1, what do you see in your pod?
Tusk is contact on a single IFV west of a building. The IFV is oriented east-west.
Roger, Tusk. The IFV is your target.
Tusk 2-1, captured. Vandal, Tusk 2-1, thanks for the support today, fellas. We're RTV.
Vandal copies. No problem. Have a safe flight back. See you next time.
Blackjack, Tusk 2 is leaving Dogbone and RTV.
Tusk 2, exit at 63 Bravo, contact Nellis approach 291.725.
Exit via 63 Bravo, approach 291.725, Tusk 2, CF.
2's up.
Roger, stand by, let me get ATIS.
Ensure our countermeasures are in standby mode, and lastly, switch on your exterior lights.
Lead is fenced out.
I know we covered quite a bit today, but you did pretty well.
Thanks.
Sure, there are a few points worth going over again though. If the situation permits, try and set yourself and your pod up for the best view of the area of interest. Run the target down the side of the jet with the pod on it and offset from that area a little bit to widen out your field of view. Gaining altitude is another way to try and add in some distance and broaden your field of view as well. When you're in either of the IR modes, don't forget to adjust your gain and levels on the pod to get the best picture and the best track on moving targets in point track mode. Also, don't forget to use the tab to alert you if you fall below a set altitude.
Roger that.
The biggest thing to take away from this is this. Don't get sucked into the pod. The TDP is just another tool in our toolbox that can massively improve the thing. It can also dramatically reduce it when misused or overused. pod has a very narrow field of view at usable ranges, and it is all too easy to lose a handle on the ground situation, looking through that proverbial filter straw. Keeping with the same idea, don't forget to look out the damn window. Keeping a good scan while using the pod is going to be the very best way to keep yourself alive and lethal. As great as the pod is, the Mark 1s are still your biggest asset.
Point taken. Thanks for working on this with me today.
Sure thing. Thanks for being a good student.
Nellis Tower, Tusk 2 with you, just passing gas peak on the strike recovery.
Tusk 2, Nellis Tower, cleared for visual, runway 21 left, report Apex.
Tusk 2 is clear, visual 21 left. We'll call you at Apex.
Tusk 2-2, winds calm, clear to land runway 21 left, check gear.
Tusk 2-2, gear down, clear to land 21 left.
Tusk 2-1, check gear.
Tusk 2, reporting Apex.
Tusk 2, Nellis Tower, roger. Tusk 2-2, give me a left 360 for spacing.
Left 360 for spacing, Tusk 2-2.
Tusk 2-1, 3 green, clear to land, 21 left.
Altitude, altitude.
Tusk 2-1, clear when able. Contact ground 275.8.
Tusk 2-1, switching to ground. Ground, Tusk 2-1, clear at Alpha.
Tusk 2-1, welcome back. Taxi Golf Charlie for Thunder.
Golf and Charlie, Tusk 2-1.
Clearing at Bravo.
Tusk 2-2, welcome back. Taxi Golf Charlie for Thunder.
Taxi via Golf, then Charlie for Tusk 2-2. Right, Kermit. See you in the debrief.
Roger. See you there.